So let's get started by looking at the HLOOKUP function right down here. What we're going to do actually is zoom in using Control-Alt-equals, just like this. And we're going to build across a number of lookup functions right across here, and then we'll copy them downwards afterwards. Now you've probably already guessed what the H and the V stand for. They stand for horizontal and vertical. So if we're looking at the HLOOKUP, we're going to be looking at this lookup function that looks horizontally. So we're going to use for the HLOOKUP this horizontal data here, and it's going to have the ability to look horizontally across just like this. So the first step is let's hop into this cell right down here underneath HLOOKUP and type in equals HL, and instantly the HLOOKUP comes up. We know that we can hit now the tab key, which completes the function name and opens up the first bracket. The first thing it's looking for, as we can see down here, is the lookup value. The lookup value is essentially what we want it to look for. We want it to look for this item number 4. And then we're going to put in a comma. Now the table array is essentially where we want the function to look. So let's use the cursor and go up here. And we want the cursor to look across here to get the item number, but we also need to select the row below as well in the table array. Now we're going to put in a comma. It's asking for row index number. So effectively, it is asking for which one of these two rows should it return when it finds the correct item number. So obviously we want it to return row 2, which is the commission. So we're going to hard code a 2 in there like this. And then we're going to put in a comma. We have one more optional argument now. And it's asking if we want to do an approximate match here, as you can see down below, or an exact match. We're going to select exact match, and we can hit tab key like this to put the word false in there. Then we close the bracket and hit enter. So let's just make sure that we understand what this function is doing in this cell. It's effectively looking for item number 4. Where is it looking? It's looking horizontally across here. And as soon as it finds item number 4 right there, it moves down to the second row here and returns 2%, as you can see down here, into this cell. Now, if we're going to copy this function down, we're obviously going to need to lock some cells. So let's pop into this cell using an F2, and we're going to go across here. Now, we don't need this reference C21 to be locked at all, but this red one here, we want it to be completely locked down. So let's tap F4, so it's totally locked, and then we can hit enter. Now, if we pop back into the cell here and tap F2, we can see that we've programmed in 4 parts to this formula. In fact, each part is called an argument. So there are 4 arguments in this formula. In the next video, we're going to discuss one of these arguments in particular that causes an enormous number of errors in Microsoft Excel. Think ahead to that next video about which argument that you think causes the most errors, and we'll see you there so we can discuss it. So we hope you had some time to think about exactly which of the 4 arguments in the HLOOKUP causes the most errors. We're going to show you exactly which one it is, and we're also going to show you a way to fix it and improve it so that you don't get those errors in the HLOOKUP if you happen to be using it in some files. So let's pop into this cell here and hit F2 so we can take a look at the function. It usually isn't the first or second argument which are causing errors in Microsoft Excel. Now, sometimes it's the 4th argument. If we look at the 4th argument closely, and in fact, if we were to delete out the 4th argument, you would see that the 4th argument here has square brackets around it. That means that it's optional. So some people skip the optional argument, which can cause some errors. The issue here is that the 4th argument, if you skip it, it actually defaults to an approximate match. So it's always our recommendation to put in that optional 4th argument. And if you're looking for an exact match, you want to have the word false there to make sure that you're getting an exact match. So as we noted, it can be this 4th argument which causes issues, but most likely it is generally this 3rd argument here which causes an enormous number of issues. The problem here is this 2 is what we would call a hard code. it is static and it's not dynamic in any way. So what can happen is if a person were to insert a row right here, for instance, we're going to go to this cell B6 and insert a row by tapping Alt-IR for insert row. So there's a new row here now. And look what's happened to our HLOOKUP function down below. It's now not working. Now let's make sure that we understand why it isn't working. If we pop back into the formula here, we can see that now the computer would need the index row number to be a 3, but it's hard-coded here as a 2. So it's actually returning the results from this blank row. This is how errors often happen in Microsoft Excel. Let's first of all make sure that we know how to fix our spreadsheet before we go forward. Now, many people, in order to delete a row, would use their mouse and they'd hover over the row number like this, and they'd right click and then they'd say delete, which would take out that row. We're going to do it with the keyboard. First of all, we want to select the row. To select a row, you do Shift spacebar like this. And then what you do is you hit Control minus, which deletes out the row. And by the way, if you wanted to select a column, you would do Control spacebar like this, but we used Shift spacebar, which selected the row. So everything's working with our spreadsheet again. Down here, we can see we're getting the correct commission at 2%. But what we need to do is we need to know how to automate this third argument so that we don't run into any issues in the future. Let's jump ahead to the next video and we'll show you how to do just that. So really what we need to do here, if we look inside of this function, is we need to figure out a way to automate this 2 here so the computer always measures the correct number that's needed for the row index number. So what we're going to do here is pop into the cell by tapping F2. And we're going to effectively replace this 2, which is static, with a dynamic function called the rows function. So let's type in rows, R-O-W-S, and then we open up a bracket. Now, if we try to move around in the spreadsheet, we're still actually stuck inside of this cell. So we can tap the F2 key again once, and now we can move around in the spreadsheet. So what we want to do is actually select this area here for our rows function, and then we can close the bracket and hit enter. So let's make sure that we understand how this function is working now. If we pop in here, we can see that what's happening is that the computer is measuring this array here, and it's determining that it has 2 rows. So it's returning a 2 into the HLOOKUP. Now this rows function could be anywhere. We could have placed it over here, but we decided to put it off to the side so it was really clear and easy to see. One thing that we can do while we're in here is go over to that rows function, select it, and tap F4 so it's completely locked down and it won't move. And now we can hit enter. Now, here comes the ultimate test and a great opportunity for you to practice some new keyboard shortcuts. Let's go up here and insert a row. Alt-IR. As you can see down below, right down here, our HLOOKUP is working perfectly since that rows function is now putting a 3 into the HLOOKUP. Remember how to delete a row? Well, first we select it. So we're going to go Shift spacebar to select the row and then Control minus, which deletes it out. As you can see, everything's back to normal down here. So I hope that was helpful. Now you know exactly what causes a lot of errors in HLOOKUPs. It's usually due to the fact that people don't know how to automate this third argument. So in an HLOOKUP function, if you're going to use it, you want to make sure that you absolutely have a rows function in that third argument so that it will adapt if people insert or delete rows into spreadsheets. Let's jump forward to the next video and we'll look at its cousin, the VLOOKUP. So let's jump in here and get our VLOOKUP function built. It works in almost the same way as the HLOOKUP, so it's going to feel really familiar and should go pretty fast. So let's start down in this cell right here, and we're going to put in equals VL, and VLOOKUP comes up right away. So we can hit the tab key, and first of all, the lookup value is going to be similar to the HLOOKUP. Lookup value is here, item number 4. Let's put in a comma. Now the table array, we're going to use this vertical data here, and we're going to use the Shift key to select all the way down, and then all the way across to get the commission as well. One little pro tip here is that we can look at this tooltip right there that comes up. We can see that the tooltip is showing us that this particular array is 5 rows by 2 columns. We're most interested in the fact that it's 2 columns wide. It's really helpful because if you're selecting a really wide array like this, it will measure for you that you have 6 columns. And that can be really helpful when you're dealing with larger data sets. Let's select what we want here, and now we're going to put in a comma. For now, we're just going to hard code the column index number in as a 2, because we want the second column here, which is commission, and then we'll put in a comma, and we want to put in a false using the tab key like this, close the bracket, and hit enter. Now we've started by building the VLOOKUP here with a 2 hard-coded, but we know from the previous example that this is going to cause an issue. The issue here would be if a user was to go in between these 2 columns and insert an extra column between them. So we're going to automate that third argument here, but instead of a rows function, we're going to use a columns function. So let's pop into this cell here and hit F2. We want to replace the hard-coded 2, this time with a columns function. So let's delete it out and type in columns like this. We're going to open a bracket. And now remember, in order to get out of this cell so that we can move in the spreadsheet, we tap the F2 key once more. Now we can use the up arrow to go over here, and we're going to select from here across to here for our columns function. Then we can put in a close bracket and hit enter. Now let's not forget to lock things down. Let's pop back into that cell, hit F2, and we're going to go over here and select the columns function array and hit F4, which locks down those cells, and now we can hit enter. So let's make sure we understand how this formula is working here. We can see that we're getting a 2%, which is the correct commission. So it's really looking for item number 4. Where is it looking? It's looking vertically down here. Once it gets to item number 4, then it goes across to the second column and returns this commission here of 2%. Now we want to test things to make sure that they're working by inserting a column. Now remember that Alt-IR was the keyboard shortcut for inserting a row. Well, it's really easy to remember how to insert a column. It's just Alt-IC. So let's go to this cell right here and go Alt-IC, and we've inserted a new column right here, and we can see that our VLOOKUP is working perfectly down below. So let's just go in here and tap F2. And we can see that what is happening now is this columns function is measuring this purple array, and it's determining that there are 3 columns in the array. It's feeding that 3 into our VLOOKUP, which is the correct column index number. So things are working really well. Now, before we forget, let's clean up our spreadsheet and practice some keyboard shortcuts. So we want to go to column C here. We select the column, remember, by going Control spacebar like this, and then we can use Control minus to delete that column out. Perfect. So now that we've built up here the HLOOKUP and the VLOOKUP and correctly automated that third argument in both of those functions, we've really gotten through the hard part. You're going to find in the next videos that the XLOOKUP is so much easier and it's not prone to errors like the HLOOKUP and the VLOOKUP. Really, it's better in every way. Let's jump forward to those videos and take a look at our favorite lookup function, the XLOOKUP.